Hello, this is your instructor, Mrs. Pochnick, and I wanted to give a little bit more information about the discipline for toddlers than what you've seen in the videos for this unit. I'm focusing on toddlers, which is the age approximately between 1 and 2 years old for this unit. Discipline would be different for different age children, so I just wanted to point that out. You wouldn't treat a 6-year-old the same way you would treat a 1-year-old. And for this little presentation, I'm bringing in information from your textbook of Understanding Psychology and also another textbook that you don't have titled The Developing Person Through Childhood and Adolescence. I wanted to bring up these points because I felt that they were very important. First of all, the word discipline means what? Sometimes people think it means punishing, but it really doesn't. So I will share with you what it means right here. Okay, it means teaching. So obviously, positive discipline means teaching positive behavior, which provides a positive self-esteem. So that is the goal. The goal is to raise a child with respect and positiveness so that they can be a happy person that has self-confidence. So the first point I have here is tell the child what to do. Example, if you want the child to walk and not run, you say, do you know what to say? This is what you would say. You would say walk, or use your walking feet. You wouldn't want to say stop running. For one thing, the last thing that the toddler remembers is the word running, and when they process things, their brain takes a few more seconds to understand what you're saying before they can change their body behavior. So you always want to tell them what to do instead of what not to do. And on your assignment sheet, this is that's located in another part of this unit, fill in the question where it says give another example of what to say if the child is yelling inside the house, and you need to be positive and tell them what to do. For the next point, I wanted to mention that it's important to be consistent and firm and always follow through with what is said. And the best way to teach discipline is to focus on the positive and natural or logical consequences. If it's very natural or logical, it makes sense, and really that's how people learn the best way. And here's an example. If a child left her plastic toy flute in the hall and the mother said, please pick up your toy flute, somebody might step on it and it'll break, and the child just doesn't, then later if somebody does step on that flute and it breaks, then the child learned from natural consequences that she should have picked up the flute. And the mother should not just hurry up and run out and buy another flute, because it teaches the child it doesn't matter what happens, she'll get her item back if she doesn't follow the rules of putting things away. So that's a natural consequence. Now, obviously, you wouldn't do this with a child that's doing something dangerous. If they're starting to run into the street, you don't wait till they're hit by a car. So you would then have to hold their hand, and if they didn't want you to hold the hand, the natural consequence would be you must hold my hand because it's not safe for you to run out in the street. So there's a lot of different situations that a child can learn from natural or logical consequences. Now for your assignment, I want you to think about what are some ways that you could handle the situations with logical or natural consequences for a toddler fighting with a sibling in the car, or running close to a swimming pool's edge. What should be done? For the next point, it's very important to allow the child some control over his life. So it's extremely valuable to allow the child to make decisions. Now give him choices between only 2 or 3 items. If the child doesn't choose, then the parent does. You would not tell the child, well, what would you like to wear today? And let's say it's snowing outside. You wouldn't let the child just choose from all the clothes and just go out in his or her bathing suit, for example. So you give 2 choices or 3 choices that are logical and let the child pick. And an example would be, which pair of pants do you want to wear, the yellow ones or the pink ones? Another example is for you. I want you to think about another example to write on your assignment sheet. The other point I wanted to make is teach children how others feel. They're not born knowing how others feel. Children are basically egocentric when they're very young, and they think of themselves. So oftentimes they do something without really thinking about how the other person feels, so that has to be pointed out. So if a child is hitting some other child, you go over and explain. You don't need to hit the child that's hitting, because they understand that there was pain, but you have to explain that that's unacceptable behavior. So think about a situation where a child might even try to, maybe innocently hurt somebody else's feelings, and how would you explain that that's not the appropriate behavior? So answer that question on your assignment sheet. The 5th point I wanted to make is how to make mealtime pleasant. Mealtime can turn into a power struggle between parents and the toddler, and especially if the toddler is not given choices in his or her life, because every single person really wants to feel in control of their life. So if the child's feeling happy and given choices in their life, they probably won't struggle so much to try to have a power struggle with the parent. And even for food choices, if the parent said, would you like peas or broccoli, and give them a choice, instead of always just making all their decisions. Now, an example, if a child is doing something at the dinner table that's not appropriate, and let's say, for example, banging the spoon on the plate and not eating, then possibly the child isn't hungry. So the child should be allowed to leave the table. If the child really is hungry and asks for some treats immediately after, of course, the parent should not give them the treats, because they'll just learn not to eat their dinner and, of course, just eat the desserts or the treats. So, and it's also hazardous to make a child just sit and sit and sit and try to force them to eat everything on their plate if they're not hungry, because obviously this can teach a child to overeat. So it's important to make mealtime pleasant, introduce foods in small quantities, introduce a large variety of foods. If a child really, really doesn't care for a food after they've tried it, don't force them to eat it, because children are born with different tastes they have different interests of foods, and it's important to let them have some control over what they eat. I want you to think of an example of what you would say to a child who is dropping food on the floor. What action would you take? And answer that on your assignment sheet. Another method of dealing with having control or not control, or teaching children to do things, or getting them to do things maybe that they don't want to do, is to use fantasy, humor, or even singing the activity. And an example would be, let's say if a child doesn't want to go to bed, so the parent could pretend that Elmo is in bed waiting for them, and maybe the parent could even say to their child, oh, I hear Elmo calling you. And then you could say the child's name softly and tell the child, do you hear Elmo calling you? And as you walk into the bedroom, you could pretend that Elmo is in bed waiting and calling and saying that Elmo wants you to lay down with him and hug him, and so the child possibly will be interested in jumping in bed and hugging Elmo. Now that would have to be, of course, if the child liked Elmo in the first place. You'd pick some type of object that the child would really want to be with. Or if a child doesn't want to put their toys away, then the person could sing, it's time to put the toys away. They do this a lot in preschools. They learn how to do positive behavior practices, and that's a real common one they have in the preschool. So it's real important to think of ways to have fun with the children. I know with my own daughter, I'd wear a Snow White mask, and one time she didn't want her teeth brushed, so I put the mask on and I pretended I was Snow White and I wanted to brush her teeth, and she was more than happy to have Snow White brush her teeth. So if you can be creative, use humor, fantasy, and sing, you can have little toddlers do almost anything. So think of an example that you could use on a toddler who didn't want their diaper changed, and put that on your assignment sheet. Now, you can prevent behavior problems if you know what to do. So this little point here is that if you keep toddlers, and I have it right here, if you keep them busy in an activity, that will cut down possibly on any problems. If there is a problem, then changing the activity or location can prevent a problem from getting bigger. So describe the beginning of a problem situation that involve toddlers and how a parent could prevent the problem from getting bigger. And again, think of the points at the top here where it says changing behavior, changing the activity or the location or the activity. And that really can work because toddlers have a very short attention span, and if they are in a different location or doing a different activity, then they often forget what the problem was because it was 2 minutes earlier, and they have a short attention span. Now the 8th point I wanted to make is that children really do want limits. They want to know the correct ways to do things. They really want to have friends. They want their parents to love them. They want to have high self-esteem. And the important part is that they deserve to have these things. So giving a child too much freedom is the wrong thing to do. And I want you to think about this. Why do you think children want limits? Why would giving them too much freedom not be beneficial for their feelings about themselves? And write that answer on your assignment sheet. The 9th point is about negative discipline. And negative discipline obviously means teaching negative behavior, which provides low self-esteem. Now, there are so many different ways that people use negative behavior to stop behavior, poor behavior or inappropriate behavior, and you can see them here. There's the harsh repeated verbal yelling. There's a lot of the physical hitting. There's threats that are carried out, and then there's the threats that are empty. They're both equally bad. There's the bribing, and people actually use food to bribe. They give them treats if they do something. And so it teaches the child to learn how to manipulate. Then the couch disciplinarian, I love that term because it represents somebody from disciplining from a distance. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're sitting on the couch, but if a parent is doing the dishes and they're busy and the child is at a distance doing something inappropriate and the parent yells at the child while they're doing the dishes to stop, the child doesn't take it seriously if the parent doesn't walk over to him. So it's very ineffective. The parent really does need to walk over and talk to the child, and it's also good to get eye level with the child and talk to them about whatever it is they're doing. Now, why do you think parents resort to this type of discipline? And write that on your paper. Now, the 10th point I wanted to make is that no discipline means not teaching positive or negative behavior, but letting the child do or have anything he or she wants. Now, this might sound fun to the child, but it actually provides low self-esteem and low self-image. The child will not be happy. Now, why do you think the child would not be happy in this situation? Why would he or she have low self-esteem? If you think about that, they could do anything they wanted, but I want you to analyze why they wouldn't be happy and write that on your assignment sheet. Now, below this, I have what pretty much all the textbooks have in there, this little part where it says the 3 main types of discipline. And they're often called authoritarian, the permissive, and then the democratic or developmental. There's different books call them different ways. And those, I have a chart on the next page that shows really the details of those. I hope you can read it. I know the font's kind of small, but the three common types, and I have the authoritarian, the permissive, and the democratic. And it gives examples of, what is the purpose? What's the goal of the discipline? And then it has examples for each one. And then this is a good reference sheet for knowing how the child will feel for each type of way of dealing with their behavior. And this chart shows the positive and the negative, the traditionally punitive responses, the real negative where people act impulsively, and then there's the magic list of anticipating the troubles ahead of time, preventing problems from happening, in all of these wonderful ways. And these, I'm hoping that you can really look at those and see how much better they are than all of the negative ones. Let's see if we can cross those out and not use those. I hope you feel that this is valuable, and please complete those questions on your other assignment sheet. Now, these are the references that I used: the Understanding Psychology textbook and the study guide to accompany the developmental person through the lifespan. So thank you for listening, and go ahead and complete the assignment. Bye-bye.